Welcome back to Chris and Retro. Tonight's video is going to be about identity and not gender identity or that whole subject matter. This is more about how we see ourselves in recovery as addicts, how we position ourselves in the world that we're in, and some experiences I've had related to that. Before we get started, I want to share with you a few additional resources that I haven't shared on the show before. I've talked about them, but I'll just share them real quick for you. I have a TikTok that it's a different type of messaging. The design, I try to do them daily, but basically it's just an inspirational theme that if you just need kind of a shot in the arm, what I'm doing is I just put out something each day. Some of them are a little longer length videos, but for the most part, they're just quick little, reminders of some things that, through my life, they usually catch my eye and they're things that inspire me. So I try to put them together for something as a good resource for you. Additionally, I have the Chris and Retro website on here. You'll see a link to my Instagram, which is basically a lot of similar to what the TikToks all are. So you'll see that gives a little bit of my background. And then iBlock Chronicles is my blog. That's probably the very first thing I did in terms of my recovery work and social media of any kind. I started this blog a long time ago. It's changed platforms a couple different times, so some of the content I've removed, but there's a fair amount of stuff in here. I did a series called The Lies I Told Myself, and this is one of them here. Everyone wants to party. So there's a bunch of stuff in there that you might want to take a look at. Might be useful resources for you. And of course, there's a link to the show itself, and then some videos and things in here, and some other things that I've done. So hopefully those resources are useful for you, and things that you will find valuable in your journey. That the show I did with Jesse on Fire. And so I try to make those in conjunction with this. So we're having, I'm touching on as many different things I can in terms of media to make sure that we're inspiring you and giving you options that are can help you on rough days, or maybe kind of push you along a little bit stronger on days that things are going well. So with that, I want to get into the subject matter tonight. Identity and how we see ourselves and how we even behave within our recovery. It's been an important subject. I remember probably maybe 3.5 years in, I had started to work on an organization called 100 Proof Living. So I had another podcast called 100 Proof Living, and we decided, me and a couple others decided to turn that into a business that was working on dealing with the risks of alcohol in corporations. Didn't really take off because the timing of it just wasn't received well. But during that time, I was working with a partner who's a friend of mine, and him and one of the other partners on this company, we had, they were cautioning me not to not to have my whole life be about being an alcoholic. And at the time I'm like, that didn't resonate with me because, for me, I saw myself as being authentic. In all my affairs, I was Chris everywhere. And I still believe that to be the way to live. However, I now look back and see really what their advice was. It wasn't saying that there was anything wrong with me being proud of the fact that I was in recovery, and that there was certainly nothing wrong with me professing recovery so that others might live. But if you want to accomplish other things, sometimes you got to temper your enthusiasm about your recovery if you're trying to accomplish other things. So let me talk about that a little bit. I think that there's two sides of this coin, and I'm asking for the middle ground. And I think for me, I found the middle ground and try to live by that. There's one side of the coin, and we see this dominantly in recovery circles, where people, their whole world is about the meeting, about the recovery, about, AA or addiction or whatever, and that becomes their entire life. Most of the time, people that live that way are, short term. It's just too much to have that be your entire life. And if you're that obsessed, if you're thinking about addiction that much, then you're not giving your brain time to breathe. And my opinion is you're also thinking about your drug of choice. And I believe that the more you saturate yourself, even well-intended, you're likely going to go back. So that's one side of it, where people are just every meeting, every event, every volunteer thing, every vigil, everything, and that's their whole life is about this space. And now it's one thing to have a space of gratitude and to support the community. It's another thing to have that be your total identity. The other side is the ones that completely just ignore the fact that they did struggle, and they aren't there to be an example and a vehicle of hope for others. Those are the ones that, have made it, and they think they can have a drink or use just a little bit, and there is no little bits. So those are the ones that really just refute the whole thing and just go on their way because they feel like they beat it. And that also is dangerous. I believe there's a middle ground, and this is the ground I've found. So with that advice they had, it did put me off a little bit, honest with you. I was like, what do you mean? The only reason I'm alive is because I took this super seriously. But I was at a cadence in my life and a point where things were starting to turn. Now, before my life fell apart, I would argue I was probably always, an addict. It wasn't manifesting yet because I wasn't consuming at that level. But with my mental health condition, I was likely always an addict or had those tendencies. So before it all really manifested itself, I was a successful professional. I've had sales awards, leadership awards. I've led teams in large corporations. I've had really all in a selling and national accounts type environment. Very good career and very thankful for it. It did all burn to the ground with my addiction, but I had some skill sets there that never went away, and all I had to do was get my stuff together so I could figure out how to use them again. When that transition comes and you're coming from the desperation of addiction, but you have other skill sets that you're trying to deploy to make a life for yourself, because identifying as an alcoholic is not going to get me a career. I mean, unless it's in counseling and stuff like that, if that's where you want to go, but it wasn't really where I wanted to go. So if you want your career and your life to be on, there's a world out there that doesn't necessarily accept that an alcoholic, recovery or not, is trustworthy. I can't help they think that way. It's stigma, but it is real. And it is something you have to face when you start looking out managing your life and your future. So what I've done is at that point, it's not in your sleeve anymore. You are an alcoholic, you are in recovery. You still have to do the work. I'm not saying hide it. Somebody asks, of course. Somebody asks me, of course I'll tell them. But it can't be on your sleeve if you're going to try to move into these other places. So what about your identity? Are you being fake? I mean, it's a valid question. Do you think I'm being fake if I'm doing that? I can understand why people think I'm not being true to myself. Personally, I am. I'm sticking to my program. I'm working with my sponsor. I do my work. And, at the same time, I get to be in a high performing sales environment where I get to accomplish things for my family that I couldn't otherwise do. And for that, I'm thankful, because the point of my recovery was to be able to be everything I could be again. The point of my recovery was to be the very best version of me that I could get up in the morning and be. So being a recovering alcoholic is part of who I am, but it's not the total me. The total me has other things. I'm a father. I'm a grandfather. I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. I love what I do in a selling environment. I like being creative. I love doing this channel. I love my family. These are all things that are more, and none of those things I just talked about required me to be an alcoholic, but they also didn't require me to not be one. You see, there's balance. I can be the identity of Chris and be all of those things in whatever stage I'm at in life. Now, if you're early on in your recovery, don't pretend to be not. Don't pretend to be. Don't pretend to be everything's fine and you're going on to your career. There's stages to this thing. Early on, you got to make sure you're digging in, do your program, make sure you got everything locked in, get your basic tools down, because life is going to keep hitting you, and you're going to always be tempted at stages to have something make you fall apart. So take that time early on and definitely dedicate and saturate yourself in the tools that you need to build to be better. But as time goes on, allow yourself to grow. Allow yourself to be available to other options that doesn't require you to constantly be saturated in only your recovery. You're recovering so that you can have a life. You're not recovering to be a super recovering guy. My recovery was not there so I could get 4-star recovery general. My recovery was there so I could provide for my family. I could have a life of meaning and help others along the way. I could show them there's hope and possibility beyond addiction. You don't have to always be in the desperate pit of addiction. If you put the work in, you can actually have more. You can have a life that's more full than you ever imagined. You can have all that. But it takes work, and it takes the early work, and it takes continued work. All I'm saying is that when you're going on a job interview, you don't have to say, "Hi, I'm Chris, I'm an alcoholic." If there's questions about your past, of course, be honest about it. But when you go on the job, and I go on the job, I'm a high-performing sales leader, and I've led teams to number one positions, and I will continue to move in that direction in the company I'm in. But that is who I am, and that's how I can have that conversation. Now, should somebody around me be struggling with their lives and very obviously having a hard time, at that point, I come alongside them as a fellow traveler, and I share with them my story. Now, my story I make sure is more prominent than others. It's probably real hard for me to go on a job interview and somebody not see it. First of all, in this day and age in a professional environment, people use LinkedIn a lot. If you go on my LinkedIn, it's going to be pretty darn hard to not see something was wrong with that guy at one point in his life, because there's the associations I'm with. I'm on the Ontario County Alternative to Incarceration Board, so I'm on a board that talks about that. I'm on the Shatterproof. I mean, I'm on some substance use panels, and then you've got the the show. There's some stuff about the show on there and some of my posts. At the same time, I try to post leadership things along those lines. So for me, I've chosen to live that life. However, I'm fortunate because I had a strong career background, had a few people advocate for me, and I could get back on track here in the career I'm in. I don't think that's the best path for everybody. I strongly believe that you allow yourself to be authentic. So what's your identity? Well, you have an addiction. You're possibly in a recovery. And that's just the way it is. And if you feel like it's appropriate in a situation to share that information, by all means do it. But if you're sitting in front of an employer and you've got an opportunity for a job of a lifetime that's going to provide for your family in any way possible, be the highest performing person in the room. That's a flip that I do on the addiction program, because I honestly believe those that enter a recovery journey, a sustained recovery journey, went through a high performance requirement. They're doing more than the average person has to do to survive. That's high performance. So you take those same tools and you can apply those on the job and you're a high performing employee. And so even if your whole world is wrapped around your recovery journey, then just position it in a way that shows that you're a high performing person because you do these things to make sure that you're locked in every single day. It'll impress your employer. Trust me. Guys, I hope this video was useful for you tonight. This identity thing, it's come up since September 11th, 2017 for me. Before that, it was pretty obvious what I was. I was in headlines around the local community here. I was thought very poorly of. That I knew what my identity was. I was trouble and I was dying. But after that, what is my identity? Well, I happen to be a person in recovery, but I also am a high performing person that wants more out of life. And I want to do more for my family. So I can just be that. I can be that. But at the same time, if somebody's struggling, I can also be there to give them hope and help and maybe a few suggestions that plant a seed that they might want to try too. And that's what I hope for this video. I hope this is something that gives you some options, something to consider. If you feel like that your whole life is about your recovery and you just don't, yes, you want to continue to work there, but work on your recovery, but maybe there's more. Maybe there's, a really good job out there that doesn't require that to be part of the subject matter. Try it. Go for it. Maybe it's time to turn the corner for you. Maybe it's time to level up your game, level up your life. Maybe this is the time. Maybe you're sure that this is the time. Be cautious, stick with your sponsors, stick with whoever it is that you find support with, and go forward. Set your goals and go forward. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate you guys. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Check out my TikTok. It's Chris in Retro as well. Instagram, you can check out Instagram. Instagram isn't too much further than what I do on, much of a variation than what I do on TikTok. And if you're curious about the blogs, chrisinretro.com under the iBlock Chronicles blog. There's some articles in there, several blogs that I've written, as well as a couple other guest appearances that I've had. Some other guests have written on it as well. So I try to I try to let that platform be used by others as well if they choose to. So if you know anybody that's got a blog post that you'd like to have posted, just send me a quick message at chrisinretro.com and I'll take a look at it and see maybe it's something we can post on there as well. So appreciate you guys tuning in. And until the next time we talk, please stay out of trouble.